This is a pipe and stand backdrop kit. It's for 10 by 10 backdrops, and it is heavy duty. The box here weighs 34 pounds, and so it is pretty hefty just picking this box up and carrying it around. Now, they have shipped me this to review for free. If you wanted to purchase it, it's going to cost you about $170. So this is not a lightweight, inexpensive backdrop stand. This is a pretty heavy-duty, moderately expensive backdrop stand. All right, so in the box we have a carry bag, and I'm glad they gave us a carry bag because these guys are pretty heavy, and I wouldn't want to have to carry all the parts separately. So there is obviously some assembly required. We have these guys here which are going to go into some flat bases. We have all of the poles here that extend and lock. And then most of the weight in this package are from these base plates, and these are heavy base plates. So each of these base plates weighs 10 pounds. So, 2/3 of the weight of this entire unit is there on the ground. This is one set or one base plate, and you can see that they latch together here. So, they fold apart to fit in the bag, but then you put them together. They have these two pegs that fit into the two holes, plus threaded steel on the bottom, and they have a chamfer hole at the top here. This is actually, I believe this is the underside. And so you're going to screw the screw in through there and put this guy here up, sticking straight up. And they do have handles right here for carrying them around after you put them all together. So you can choose to put this guy in the center of the plate or at the edge of the plate. And they include two short screws if you're putting them at the edge of the plate. And then on the ends of these guys are some longer screws if you're going through the center point. Alright, so this screw, if you install it, will hold this plate together. And then you can screw these on by hand to the ends here, and so it's possible to take these guys off without disassembling the entire plate. Alright, these two base plates, all steel construction. The upright and the bottom piece, they're all steel. Now, the posts, for the most part, are aluminum. There's a couple pieces of metal where they link together, but the main body of all the posts are aluminum, so they're nice and light. Alright, each of these posts has 3 sections, and you can pull it out and you can twist to turn to lock it at any height. So if you need extra height, you can pull that section out and lock it. If you need a lot of height, you can pull both sections out and lock both sections. So, that is a tall pole. So fully extended, this pole here is actually just a little bit longer than 10 feet. Although you'll typically be clicking things into these guys here, so the actual height will be an inch or two below that. So these poles just fit directly over here, and they just slide down. So there's nothing particularly attaching them down there, so you can just lift them off, but you have a good, 8 inches or so of overlap there to keep them held in place. So you're unable to lift and move the base by lifting the pole up. You would have to lift the pole and then move the base, or kind of slide the base with your foot. Now the kit includes one crossbar, but this is a set where you can lock together and make grids of this whole system. And so if you had a square grid, it would kind of self-support in a lot of different directions. So there's 90-degree angles where you can connect these pieces in. So each end of the crossbars have these little hooks which go into and then hook down into those things at the top of the uprights. To put this up, you just take that hook, put it in that hole, and then go down. Alright, so the 10-foot crossbar has 2 ends with hooks, and they have these little clips in here. And then in the middle, there's this section here that has holes every so often, and so you can do different lengths by putting in, more or less of these holes. So the absolute minimum length is if you have one bar hooked into this hole and then the other bar pushed up against it. Now in that case, one of these bars is not hooked in place, so it could pull out, but that is the minimum length. So that minimum width of the top bar is 82 inches, or just under 7 feet. Now with both bars clipped into the inside openings, the length here is 94 inches, which is just a hair under 8 feet. Now with one of those clips at the inner position and one at the outer position, you can get to 106 inches, or just under 9 feet. And extended fully, it's at about 117 inches, or just under 10 feet. So I recommend putting the pole on the floor and then setting your base appropriately. Alright, so that guy's up there, and it's relatively solid. I've used other drape systems that kind of sag and can barely support the pole itself. This guy wouldn't hold me up, but it is up there, and it is definitely going to be solid for holding a drape up. So the nice thing about the hooks on the end is one end will stay up if you're pulling the other end down and putting something on or off of it. Alright, so that's not quite the full height. It's also not quite the full width, but you can see, it's holding up those heavy-duty blackout curtains just fine. So a couple of sandbags or ground stakes would be useful, but it's relatively solid just with those 10-pound base plates. The bag you get has no internal or external pockets. It's basically just a bag, and I think it's just for the poles and the cross braces. These guys here could theoretically fit in them if you disassembled them, but I think they'd be a little heavy. They might actually risk ripping through this bag. I mean, it's relatively heavy duty, kind of a rubber coated nylon it looks like, but I don't think it's designed for carrying the base plates. I think it's just for the aluminum poles and crossbars. It would have been nice to have a pocket for like this wrench, for example, and those extra screws. But other than that, it's a pretty complete kit. So it doesn't come with anything to clamp the backdrop to the sides. You have to have, a backdrop that can go through a pole for this to work. There's nothing to clamp it to the top. So you'll have to provide your own clamps and elastic if you want that. But the actual frame itself is very solid. And you can buy more, of course, buy more uprights and more cross pieces and make larger sections or grids and so forth. Now, if you're trying to put this up to the full 10 feet, you can unlock and move and lock with this guy in place. So you're basically able to adjust this from the ground from a height perspective. So you can, undo these things and push things farther up as high as you can get and then lock them in place. And the hooks have enough room so that you can do angles like this. So you can take one side down, walk to the other side, take the other side down. Or if you want to make an angle for some reason, you can do that. So my somewhat off-label use is outside. And my plan here is to use these to block out light pollution from various lights over in the property next door, and also to some extent to block the wind. Now you can see here we have just a couple mile-an-hour breeze, maybe 3 or 4, and these guys are swinging around. The bases I have weighted down with some concrete blocks and giant rocks and so forth, so it hasn't gone anywhere. And my hope here is, because I'm not anchoring the base, wind will flip these things around if a big gust comes up, but it won't pull that guy around. And so I can have it anchored up to the house here, and then the bases are weighed down. So I think the stand itself is going to be plenty strong. I think it's only going to block light if the wind is light. And it's also hopefully blocking a little bit of breezes from my telescope, so the wind won't knock the telescope around. But mostly I'm trying to keep the light out. This is what it looks like from the back side. So you can see when the wind catches it, they blow, but they're not acting like sails because they're only hooked at the top. So the wind here is, 6 to 8 miles per hour. Now in the 6 to 8 mile an hour winds, they flip off so much the light's going to get through. I probably wouldn't be using the telescope with that much wind. Alright, yeah, so that stand seems to be definitely rigid enough for this kind of off-label outdoor application. Alright, the 2 uprights go from end to end in that bag. The other 3 poles for the crossbar are a little bit shorter. I've actually rolled up my curtains over 2 of them because I don't care about wrinkles. So there's plenty of room in that bag. If I disassembled the bases, I could slide them in there. It'd make it a lot heavier if I did that, though. Without disassembling those guys, we got those and the bag. And of the 2, the bag is a lot lighter to carry.